So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. All right, so returning now to the Dorley matrix, we can see that if our 8 epitomes for the indices, 4 for the I index and 4 for the J index, if these values are correct, if they are right, and we take them as they are, then we see that they reflect, first of all, in the I index, the level of divine science. And they reflect in the J index, the level of absolute Christian Science. They are in the language of the 6,000-year period. Can these values be lifted up into the language of the 7,000-year period? Do you think they can? Yeah. Good. Yes, I think so too. I hope so. We don't have anything else to do for the rest of the week. But how can we do that? That's the question. How can we do that? And so we would go to the model of being. We would go to the field of, the model of, the whole model of the 7,000-year period language of the capitalized terms. And you have to keep in mind now the Dorley matrix and the model of being. You know, on the West Coast we found that we could use 2 overhead projectors. We had 2 of them going at once. And I think by the end of the week we wished we had 3. We actually could have had 3 going all at once to keep all of the relationships, you know, going back and forth with the relationships and everything. So since we don't have that luxury here now, we will work with the 1 overhead projector, and you will have to keep in mind now the Dorley matrix. And so we would now think of that Dorley matrix. We said that the I index is reflecting divine science, and that the values in the I index are all values that, according to our hypothesis, reflect divine science, right? The I index reflects divine science. The J index reflects absolute Christian Science, right? And we have color coding, so you can follow the color coding you see here. We have divine science in the magenta, absolute Christian Science in blue, and the array of Christian Science in green. So I said to you, if those index values are in the language of the 6,000-year period, which they are because they are not in capitalized terms, but they are in scientific metaphysics. So we have God's self-declaration, God's self-translation, God's infinite self-reflection, and God's self-interpretation as science. if we want to translate the language of the 6,000-year period into the language of the 7,000-year period, we have to do what? To go to the model of being at the point of the level of divine science, right? And so, see, well, what is the capitalized term that appears in divine science at the point of the word? Life. The one life. Divine science at the point of the Christ. Truth. Divine science at the point of Christianity. Love. And divine science at the point of science, divine principle, love. So that we have now translated into the higher language to see what is being reflected. What is being reflected in the I index values. Okay? Let's go to the J index. And we said that those values all have the tonality of absolute Christian Science. That absolute Christian Science, therefore, is somehow reflected in that J index. How can I now translate or retranslate back into the original deep structure language those values to see what is actually being reflected? If absolute Christian Science is indeed being reflected there, what actually is reflected in terms of synonymous terms? So I go in the model of being to the level of absolute Christian Science, and I see at the point of the word that it must be life, truth, and love. At the point of the Christ, truth, life, and love. At the point of Christianity, life and love, and at the point of absolute Christian Science as science, truth, and love. So there we have just so simply, so naturally and easily come to the translation of the 6,000-year period into the 7th, and so we have the hypothesis set forth, and we can move now into the further into the relationship that is going on in that hypothesis. There you see them both together. What I want to do now is to point out the various relationships to you. What is going on in this relationship between divine science and absolute Christian Science? We have to see, first of all, that with each vertical, right, each vertical or each column in the Dorley matrix, in the word matrix, that the vertical there in Christian Science is accentuated by the whole vertical of the model of being. In other words, standing above the 4 points of intersection in the word vertical in the word matrix stands the word vertical in the model of being. Actually, specifically, I want to say that in regard to life and life, truth, and love. That life and life, truth, and love are impelling forth the whole of what we see as the vertical of the word in the Dorley matrix, in the word matrix. Okay? Let's go on. The whole of the vertical of the Christ, specifically in the model of being what we see as truth, and truth, life, and love, is impelling forth what we see as the Christ vertical in the doorly or word matrix. That the vertical of Christianity in the model of being as love and life and love is impelling forth what we see in the doorly or word matrix as the whole vertical of Christianity there. And finally, in science, that the whole vertical, specifically at the point of divine science as divine principle love, and as absolute Christian science, truth and love, that law of interdependence is impelling forth the appearing of the science vertical that we see in the doorly or word matrix. Okay? So that every vertical in the word matrix is, so to say, permeated with that background of its vertical, its corresponding vertical in the model of being. That's the first part. Now, the moment you want to see the four individual reflections within the vertical in the doorly matrix, in the word matrix, the pure vertical has to be reflected or accentuated by the four laws of absolute Christian science. So I have the whole purity of that word vertical coming right through, all the way through the word, from the model of being to the doorly matrix. And when I want to see the accentuations, you see, actually it's this, isn't it? We're looking at this order here, the order of the word, what appears as the straight, clean order of the word in the model of being, now is being accentuated in four different ways. So that vertical, that clean vertical, now is being, at the point of Christian science, accentuated in four different ways. How is it accentuated? At the point of the Word in absolute Christian science, as reflecting life, truth, and love. So I have the pure vertical reflecting back on itself in purity, so that Word as Word is the pure essence of that Word. But when I come to the Word as the Christ, I have that pure vertical, but with a touch of, with a reflection of truth, life, and love. So that when life and life, truth, and love reflect a touch of truth, life, and love, I get soul, principle, life. I get the accentuation on the Christ selfhood. When the pure vertical of the Word is accentuated by or reflected by or has a touch of, if I blend that with, put a pinch of, so we're adding to that pure cake I'm making, I want a little touch of ginger, a little touch of cinnamon, and that changes the whole cake. It's the same cake, but it has a little different accentuation to it, so that when that pure Word is reflecting life and love, I see that actually that's what's going on here at the point of the Word as Christianity, that I get the pure demonstration of life and love in the Word, see? And we'll see how those capitalized terms show us what that is. And then I have the pure vertical of the Word again, but if it reflects in Christian Science, if I reflect that whole thing with truth and love, that whole vertical thrust of divine science to absolute Christian Science to Christian Science, and then there's a touch of science in it, that gives me the highest aspect of the word order, the God-being aspect of the word order. Beautiful, beautiful.